Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rapid City Legal and Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, March 30th, 2016. I'd like to start the meeting with a roll call and determination of quorum, please, Maggie. Thank you. Now's the time to adopt today's agenda. If I can entertain a motion from any seated committee members to either add, modify, or go ahead and adopt the agenda as presented today. I've got a motion by Lewis to adopt, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been adopted for today. Now is the time for general public comment. This is the time for any member of the audience to address the seated committee members today on any item that is currently not on today's agenda. I currently have no speaker request forms for general public comment. Am I missing anyone? Seeing none, we're going to move on to consent items. Consent public comment. Consent items today are items 1 through 15 on today's agenda. Let me just double check that. Yes, 1 through 15. I currently have no speaker request forms for any consent items. Am I missing anyone in the audience? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Now's the time to address the consent items 1 through 15. If there's any seated committee member that'd like to pull off an item off the consent calendar for separate consideration, I'll hear from you now. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items as presented. Got a motion by Lewis to approve consent items 1 through 15, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent items have been approved. We're now on to the non-consent calendar. Non-consent items today are items 16 through 23 on the agenda. I have 2 speaker request forms, but they are to answer questions or available to answer questions, both concerning item 20. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the committee members on non-consent items? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Item number 16 is to authorize funding for ADA repairs at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center from the Vision account in the amount of $1,335,399.23. Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me make a motion to send to the full council without recommendation.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom to send item 16 to council without recommendation. Generally, we make these recommendations in committee just to let the audience know. When we think there's going to be a full discussion by all the council members so that we don't have to hold a conversation twice. Any further discussion? Alderman Nordstrom, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to emphasize a couple of things on this item is that these are just estimates at this point. And it's not including the Barnett Arena, everything else but the Barnett Arena. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that part of it, and we will have more discussion Monday night on this item. But right now, this is just an estimate for everything but the Barnett Arena. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17 is to acknowledge the pending repair or remodel expenses at the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center and designate the Vision account as the primary funding source for these expenses. Chair recognizes, I've got a motion by Lewis to acknowledge. Do I have a second?
Nope.
All right. Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I'll make the motion to send to the full council without recommendation.
Second.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom, second by Lewis, to send item number 17 to council without recommendation. Alderman Lewis, I believe the only reason that this is going to council without recommendation as well is because it'll probably generate a discussion because it's actually has some changes to the current ordinance. So, Chair
I'm just so
recognizes.
excited to be leaving that I just want to do anything I can. So, thanks.
I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 18 is the second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6100 to add microbreweries as a conditional use in the Central Business District by amending Section 17.16.030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve. Second.
I've got a motion by Lewis to approve, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 19 is to authorize staff to draft an ordinance regulating short-term rentals. Chair would like to recognize Robert.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Yes, item number 19 is a discussion item regarding the need to take a look at short-term rentals. I'll give you a little background history or background on this very brief presentation. In 2015, the City Council denied a request by an applicant for an Airbnb. If you'll recall that, the Planning Commission had previously approved it. The conditional use permit request identified to the city that short-term rentals are becoming an issue that we recognize in the city and that we feel the need to address. To give you some quick information, a bed and breakfast, which is currently regulated in the ordinance, would typically be the type of short-term rental where the property owners were in the home and were providing amenities and services to the applicants or to the guests. Whereas a vacation home rental, as we see today, would most likely be one wherein the property owner was not in the home, was leaving the home for a specific amount of time, and renting that home out to guests. What we've seen in that instance then is that can create a problem within a residential neighborhood. We've seen and heard reports across the country regarding party houses and rental housing shortages, affordable housing shortages, increases in crime, and emerging undesirable neighborhood character. As a result of that, and in combination with the recent denial by the City Council regarding an Airbnb, we thought it time to bring forward some considerations for the City Council. First, keeping in mind that definition, the difference between a bed and breakfast and a vacation home rental, and keeping in mind the standard submittal requirements that we look at as planners every day regarding the need for an operations plan and a site plan. These are things that we would like to be able to introduce towards the review of short-term rentals, specifically vacation home rentals in their own right. There's also additional review criteria that we could see that would be specific to short-term rentals, especially the classification of use. Is it a bed and breakfast? Is it a short-term rental? Do we need to be looking at the renewal of these things if we bring them forward as a special use permit? Is there an upward limit that we want to see? And do we have primary residency? In other words, do we have a person living in the home and renting it out on occasion? What we've been seeing nationwide is a trend where people buy the home and then strictly use it as a short-term rental, never actually residing in the residence themselves. That's one of the reasons that we're seeing increases or decreases in affordable housing and increases in the price of, or in shortages of rental housing in the within communities. Other things that we're seeing are, is there a need for background checks? If we do this as a special use permit, what kind of fee structure should we apply to that? Is there a notification requirement that should be considered to the neighborhood? And how would we enforce penalties and the application or implementation of these plans? Given all that consideration, we'll make this available for you guys to take a look at prior to City Council. But we have some options for you to consider, and we have a recommendation that we feel city staff can get behind. The first would be do nothing. Short-term rentals would be considered a bed and breakfast today. We've found in the past that is an inflexible and insufficient solution. It does not recognize the vacation home rentals act differently in a neighborhood than do a bed and breakfast. And it does require a conditional use permit, which must be heard before the Planning Commission, is appealable to City Council, and requires notification of the neighbors and a signpost on the property. The second would be a certificate, which would operate much in the same way as a home occupation does. It has operation criteria that we establish and inform the applicant of at the time that they make the submittal, but there's no notification requirement, no formal review process, and no potential for renewal review if there is a complaint. The third option would be administrative. We have several types of applications which we have recently implemented, which would fall in the same vein as this. Would be a special use permit similar to, say, a sidewalk vending permit today, which is reviewed administratively by staff and is approved or denied at the discretion of the director or acting director in this case. We typically would have 13 days to review that. The decision of the director would be appealable to City Council. And you, at your discretion, could consider public comments, the need for public comment or not, the need for renewal or not, and enforcement issues at that time. The fourth would be a conditional use permit, which would operate similar to the bed and breakfast today, but there would be a distinction between a bed and breakfast and a vacation home rental and how they operate differently. But the review process would be the same, the criteria would be the same. And finally, we have City Council recommendation, which we believe would only be appropriate in the most controversial or high-impact requests. And we have a system in place designed to avoid having that type of backlog in the City Council's agenda at this time. So what staff is recommending today, and I should make this clear, is that South Dakota codified law today says that 14 days or less per calendar year, which is the vast majority of what we would believe to see these short-term rentals operating as, there is no action required. So in less than 14 days, there would be no review, no criteria to establish. The operator would not need to review this with the city. Anything beyond that would be an administrative review. The administrative option that I presented to you, action by the director. There would be a classification of how they were operating. That use would be appealable to City Council with an application fee. And we would require and review it the same as we would any other development application in the city, with some specific submittal requirements, development review team inclusion, and no additional restrictions or renewals placed on in the future. So with that, we just wanted to run this by you, allow you to take it to City Council for consideration.
Thank you. And if the City Council Monday night takes your recommendation, staff's recommendation to proceed with writing this up, roughly how long would it take before City Council were to see it back?
Probably 6 to 8 weeks, I believe. 2 months? 2 months.
About 2 months? All right. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, if I may, is make the motion to authorize staff to move forward on this drafting.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom, second by Lewis, to authorize staff to draft an ordinance based on staff's recommendation. Alderman Nordstrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lorico, just a couple of points for me again. On the affordable housing aspect of it, have you got any data on that? I'm in favor of this. I like it, what you're presenting on it, but I was wondering if you have any data behind this.
Unfortunately, I do not have any concrete data. It's actually such an emerging economy that there is no concrete data at this point in terms of where or how badly these types of uses are affecting affordable housing in the area. We just know that they are.
Okay, and I appreciate the information and the truth on this, not being able to actually disseminate the information from the data. So what we're dealing with is just anecdotal information on affordable housing.
Anecdotal in Rapid City, there have been studies that have been done in larger communities, San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles being among them. I don't know how applicable those would be to Rapid City, but there is some data that is starting to emerge, yes.
Okay, I'm supportive of that because I think we need more affordable housing, and so whatever we can do to help in that area, and this looks like it's a good direction to start with. And I'll probably have some more questions Monday night, but thank you for the presentation.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Lewis. No? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Robert. Item number 20 is a request from Black Hills Corporation to consider an application for a resolution to create a tax incremental district and a resolution to approve a tax incremental district project plan for property generally described as being located southwest corner of the intersection of South U.S. Highway 16 and Cantron Boulevard. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve. I get a second. I'd explain myself. Can I get a second for discussion even?
For discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a motion to approve by Lewis, second by Nordstrom. Alderman Lewis, you still have the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. I know there's some discussion that's going to go on this Monday night, and I know that we're going to probably, there's some alternative ideas out there, for plans for possibly getting some money to the corporation, but I just think it's important that we come out strongly in favor of things like this whenever we can, and to not to give it a no recommendation for me. I'd rather just give it a positive recommendation going forward, because I think it's important that we show we are all about economic development. I realize there's different attitudes about how we should get there, but I think that this is a great thing. This corporation building this is going to be great for our community, create a lot of higher paying jobs, which we need, which will hopefully attract more companies of the same caliber and same ideas. So that's my general idea behind the positive motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a substitute motion to send to council without recommendation. You can second it.
Seeing no second, I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Alderman
may.
Nordstrom, you still have the floor.
Mr. Lewis is on the right track of supporting the industry and this TIF, and especially Black Hills Corporation for being involved in the community like this. I applaud you. I really hope this goes forward on it. You can't get enough support from me on seeing a project like this going forward. So good luck on having a presentation ready to go on, or answering questions for Monday night. And I understand there's a couple of minor changes that have taken place since the last time we've had the conversation, so I'll have to take a few minutes to take a look at those new amendments, and then may stand by for questions. Thank you. I'll yield.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I won't be supporting this motion just because of the reason I stated prior to this. I think it's very important that we do our best to get out into the press and anywhere out in the world that we are fully supportive of anybody who wants to create higher paying jobs in this community, and so therefore my original motion still stands in my mind. So if I'm not supporting, I'll support it at council too as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do have a motion on the floor to send to council without recommendation, and the reason I'm supporting that at this time as well is that this is a twofold request. It is to approve to create a tax incremental district, as well as to approve the district project plan, and I will admit I have not reviewed the plan yet, so I am supporting sending it to council without recommendation. I was support of this TIF on the TIF committee, but I do want the extra time to review the project plan. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries with a recommendation to send to council without recommendation, 2-1. Alderman Lewis voting no. Item number 21 is the second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6101 to codify the process for commercial parking permits by amending section 10.44 to the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion by Lewis to approve, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 22 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6111 to change the terms and powers of the Rapid City Regional Airport Board by amending sections 2.72.030 and 2.72.070 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I've got a motion by Lewis to approve.
Second.
Second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Nyberg, may I ask you to at least give clarification as far as what the primary changes are regarding this?
If I get my microphone. There we go. Basically, the changes are, the terms right now are 3-year terms. They're going to change to 5-year terms. We've had a little bit of an issue with this year. There are 3 of the 5 members. Their terms are up at the same time, so we're kind of re-staggering the terms. They're going to be 5-year terms, so one is up each time. That, and the other change is all of the rules and regulations and rates and charges, all of their various rules that the airport board makes have to come to council now for approval. There was a change in state law a year ago, and so you've seen a couple of things already come for approval, so now we're just adding this to the ordinance so it's clear what the process is.
So Mr. Nyberg, just for clarification, primary purpose of bringing this forward is to stagger the term lengths of the members coming on board. And then secondary is a state law changed, which now requires all financial information. Am I stating that roughly correctly? It has to come before City Council for approval?
It's also the rules and regulations. So they have some minimum standards. They have various other rules for people that operate businesses on the airfield, and those would have to come here as well.
Thank you. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you. Mr. Nyberg, I just want to be clear, we don't have anything to do with policies out there. It's just rules and regulations, but not necessarily policies.
I think that's generally correct. They're in charge of managing the airport. When they enact a rule that says in order to do business as, they have different, Tony can probably explain it a little better, but they have different rules for different types of businesses. You have minimum standards that you have to meet. It's sort of like planning rules for the city. It's just a microcosm of that. So it's just, they develop all those, come up with what those should be, and then they need to come to the council for final approval.
I believe that answers my question. Thank you. I'll yield.
Thank you. I do have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 23 is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the option and land lease between the City of Rapid City and SBA Towers, number 9 LLC. I've got a motion by Lewis to approve, second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Nyberg, may I impose on you to just give a brief synopsis of what this item?
Sure. This is a lease to SBA Towers. They do, basically they construct and manage towers for Verizon Wireless. They're looking at a site. It's on the north, basically the north side of the landfill. It's right to on the south side of Catron Boulevard. Right now, you might be familiar with, there's a National Guard building and equipment store out there. They have a lease. This would be just to the west of that. Basically, the terms of it are that it's an option to start with. They pay $1,200 for a one-year option to lease it. They have an option to renew that for another $1,200 for another year. If they do exercise the option to lease, it's $1,200 a month is the initial for the first year, the rent for the first year. It's got an automatic increase of 3% a year. There's also a revenue sharing potential that if they do this and they sublease it then to Verizon, who puts their antennas and equipment on the tower, and then if they get another company, you get another 15% of the rental amount for each additional company. So that's the revenue side of things. We also have a provision in there. We can put our communications equipment on there for $1 a year if we have the need to do so. I know we have that arrangement on a different tower as well. The one thing I wanted to point out, I think it's in the summary, that this still, it doesn't approve the tower necessarily. They still have to go through the planning and zoning processes. They need to file all their applications, get approvals before they can construct the tower. And this doesn't guarantee that. It's still subject to the process. We're not promising them they can build it. They still need to get the approval as anybody else would. So I guess I can answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Nyberg. Any further discussion? I do have a motion to approve. All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Nordstrom to adjourn? Second by Lewis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.